Yo, everybody's talking about Lil Durk's murder-for-hire case. But almost nobody is talking about the move his legal team just made that could actually change the entire direction of this trial. And that's the part that's got people inside the legal world paying attention. Because while social media keeps arguing about whether Durk is cooked or coming home, his lawyers have been fighting a completely different battle behind the scenes. See, most people think every court hearing is about proving guilt or innocence. It's not. Sometimes the biggest victory happens before the jury even walks into the courtroom. Here's what people missed. Durk's attorneys challenged key evidence that prosecutors wanted to use, arguing that some material could unfairly influence a jury by portraying him as part of a broader criminal narrative instead of focusing on the actual charges. That's not the same as beating the case. But limiting what jurors can see or hear can be a meaningful legal win if the judge agrees on specific issues. Now think about that for a second. If the jury never hears certain information, the prosecution has to lean much harder on the evidence that remains. And that's exactly why legal analysts pay so much attention to pretrial rulings. This isn't TikTok drama. This is courtroom strategy. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The internet keeps treating every delay as if it's automatically good or bad for Durk. Reality? Not necessarily. Federal cases, especially ones involving multiple defendants, often get delayed because of evidence reviews, scheduling, or motions from either side. A delay alone doesn't tell you who's winning. That's why I keep saying, stop watching headlines. Start watching the paperwork. Because the paperwork tells the real story. Everybody wants the emotional clips. Nobody wants to read the motions. But the motions are exactly where these cases are won and lost. Now don't get it twisted. This doesn't mean Lil Durk beat the case. He's still pleaded not guilty, and the prosecution continues pursuing the charges. The case has not been resolved, and any final outcome will be decided in court. But if you want to know who's actually paying attention, it's the people watching these pre-trial decisions. Because sometimes, the biggest headline is the one nobody posts. So let me ask you, is this the first sign that Durk's defense is building real momentum? Or is this just one small win in a much bigger legal fight? Drop your thoughts below. Everybody is focused on the headline, but almost nobody is paying attention to the courtroom moves that could have a much bigger impact than the viral posts flying around social media. If you have been scrolling through your feed lately, you have probably seen countless people saying Lil Durk is finished, while others are already predicting that he is going to beat the case. The truth is that neither side actually knows what is going to happen, because federal criminal cases are not decided on Instagram, YouTube Shorts, or X. They are decided through evidence, legal arguments, and the judge's rulings long before a jury ever reaches a verdict. That is why the latest development involving Lil Durk deserves far more attention than it is getting, because while everybody else has been chasing dramatic headlines, something much more important has been happening behind the scenes. If you understand how high-profile federal cases work, then you already know that some of the biggest victories never become trending topics. They happen inside a courtroom, hidden inside legal filings that most people never read. And that is exactly why today's update is so interesting. For weeks, the conversation online has stayed almost the same. Every content creator seems to be repeating the exact same story, talking about the charges, discussing old interviews, replaying clips, and arguing over what they think will happen next. But almost nobody is asking a much smarter question. What has Lil Durk's legal team actually been doing while everybody else has been distracted by social media debates? That question matters because experienced defense attorneys rarely spend their time trying to win arguments online. Their real job is to weaken the prosecution's case before the trial even begins. Every motion they file has a purpose. Every objection is designed to shape what evidence the jury will eventually hear. It may not sound exciting at first, but this stage of the process is often where the foundation of the entire case is built. Sometimes a single ruling changes the strategy for both sides, and that is exactly why legal experts spend so much time studying pretrial decisions instead of chasing internet rumors. According to publicly reported court developments, Lil Durk's attorneys have challenged certain evidence and legal arguments that prosecutors wanted to use during the case. That does not mean the charges disappear, and it definitely does not mean the case is over. However, it does mean the defense is actively trying to narrow the scope of what prosecutors can present in front of a jury. That is a normal part of the legal process, but it is also one of the most important parts. The average fan usually sees only the arrest, the headlines, and eventually the verdict. They never see the months of legal battles taking place before trial. Yet those battles often determine what the jury is allowed to consider. If key evidence is excluded or limited, the prosecution may have to adjust its entire presentation. On the other hand, if the judge allows everything to come in, the defense has to rethink its strategy. That is why every hearing matters, even when it does not produce flashy headlines. What makes this situation even more interesting is how quickly social media creates its own version of reality. One court filing appears, and within minutes people claim somebody has already won. Then another update appears, and suddenly the same people insist everything has completely changed. That is not how the legal system works. Federal cases move slowly for a reason. Judges review motions carefully, attorneys respond to each other's arguments, and every decision becomes part of a much larger process. Patience is one of the biggest advantages in a courtroom, even though it is one of the hardest things to find on the internet. While millions of people are reacting emotionally to every headline, the lawyers are focusing on facts, procedure, and strategy. Those are the things that actually influence the outcome. This is also why so many experienced legal analysts keep reminding people not to confuse a procedural victory with a final victory. Winning an important motion can absolutely help the defense, but it does not automatically mean the defendant will be acquitted. At the same time, losing one motion does not automatically guarantee a conviction either. Every ruling is simply one piece of a much larger puzzle. That is the reality that often gets lost once a story becomes entertainment instead of news. The internet rewards confidence, even when the facts remain uncertain. Courtrooms reward evidence, preparation, and precision. Those are two completely different worlds, and Lil Durk's case is proving that once again. As more hearings take place, the public will probably keep chasing dramatic headlines, but the people paying closest attention will continue watching the legal filings, because that is where the real story is unfolding. The reason this matters so much is because federal prosecutors do not simply walk into court with a stack of evidence and expect everything to be accepted without challenge. Every piece of evidence has to survive legal scrutiny. Defense attorneys have the right to question how it was obtained, whether it is relevant, whether it is unfairly prejudicial, and whether it should even be presented to a jury. That process can take months, sometimes even longer than the public expects. While fans are counting likes, views, and trending hashtags, lawyers are carefully reviewing thousands of pages of documents, digital records, witness statements, and legal precedents. It is a completely different world from what most people see online, and that is exactly why this latest courtroom development deserves more attention than another recycled social media debate. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that every motion filed by a defense team is simply an attempt to delay the inevitable. That is not always true. In many high-profile federal cases, pretrial motions are a strategic tool designed to define the boundaries of the trial itself. Imagine trying to play a championship game where the rules are still being decided before kickoff. That is essentially what happens during this stage of a criminal case. Both sides are fighting to shape what the jury will ultimately hear, what witnesses can testify about, and how certain evidence can be interpreted. Those decisions can influence how the entire case unfolds, which is why experienced attorneys spend enormous amounts of time preparing for these hearings. Another reason people are overlooking this story is because courtroom victories are rarely dramatic. There is no championship trophy, no celebration, and no immediate declaration that one side has won. Instead, a judge issues rulings on specific legal questions, and both sides adjust their strategy accordingly. To the average person, that may seem boring compared to a dramatic headline or a heated social media argument. However, legal professionals know that these rulings often have long-term consequences. A successful motion can force prosecutors to rethink how they present their case. At the same time, an unsuccessful motion can reveal what arguments the defense plans to emphasize later during trial. Every filing offers clues, even when it does not provide definitive answers. That is why so many experienced courtroom observers avoid making bold predictions after every hearing. They understand that federal litigation is a marathon, not a sprint. One favorable ruling does not erase the charges, and one unfavorable ruling does not automatically end the defense's chances. Instead, each decision becomes another piece of an increasingly complex legal puzzle. The prosecution continues refining its case. The defense continues looking for weaknesses. The judge continues evaluating the law. Meanwhile, the public often reacts to isolated moments without seeing how those moments fit into the broader legal strategy. That disconnect explains why internet conversations can sound completely different from discussions taking place among attorneys and legal analysts. Another interesting aspect of this case is the level of public attention surrounding it. Because Lil Durk is one of the most recognizable figures in modern hip-hop, every development immediately becomes content for social media pages, podcasts, reaction channels, and entertainment websites. That level of visibility creates enormous pressure for everyone involved, but it does not change the legal standards that apply inside the courtroom. Judges are expected to base their rulings on the law, not on public opinion. Jurors, when selected, are instructed to evaluate only the evidence presented during the trial. That separation between public discussion and courtroom procedure is one of the foundations of the American legal system, even when high-profile cases dominate the news cycle. There is also a lesson here that extends beyond one artist or one case. Celebrity legal battles often become entertainment long before they reach a conclusion. Clips are edited for maximum drama. Headlines are written to generate clicks, and speculation spreads faster than verified information. As a result, many people begin treating assumptions as established facts. That is why it is so important to distinguish between allegations, evidence, legal arguments, and final verdicts. They are not interchangeable. A person can face serious allegations while still maintaining the presumption of innocence until proven guilty in court. Likewise, a procedural victory can strengthen a legal position without guaranteeing the ultimate outcome. Understanding those distinctions leads to a much clearer picture of what is actually happening. For now, the most accurate way to view Lil Durk's situation is as an ongoing legal process rather than a completed story. His attorneys continue advocating on his behalf, prosecutors continue presenting their case, and the court continues resolving important legal questions before any final determination is made. That may not produce the kind of instant gratification social media rewards, but it reflects how the justice system is designed to function. As additional hearings take place and more rulings become public, the picture will gradually become clearer. Until then, the smartest approach is to focus on verified court developments instead of internet speculation, because in a case of this magnitude, the most significant developments are often the quiet ones that receive the least attention at first but eventually prove to have the greatest impact. Now here is the question almost nobody is asking. Why would Lil Durk's legal team invest so much time and effort into these pretrial motions if they believed they had no chance of influencing the outcome? Experienced defense attorneys know that every federal case is built piece by piece. Prosecutors present their theory, but that theory has to be supported by evidence that survives legal review. The defense is not expected to prove innocence. Instead, its role is to challenge the government's evidence, question the reliability of witnesses when appropriate, and argue that prosecutors have not met the legal standards required by the court. That process can seem slow from the outside, but every motion, every hearing, and every ruling becomes another opportunity to strengthen one side or expose weaknesses in the other. This is why people who closely follow federal litigation spend more time reading court documents than reacting to viral headlines. Think about how different this is from the way stories spread online. Social media thrives on certainty. Every creator wants to sound like they already know the ending. One video claims the prosecution has an unbeatable case. The next insists the defense has already won. Both statements generate views because they sound definitive, even if the facts do not support such confident conclusions. Real court proceedings are rarely that simple. Judges often issue detailed rulings that help one side on one issue while favoring the other side on a different issue. Legal battles are filled with nuance, and nuance does not always perform well on social platforms. That is why the biggest developments sometimes receive the least attention. They require patience, context, and a willingness to look beyond the headlines. Another important point that deserves attention is the difference between public perception and legal reality. Public opinion can change overnight. A single interview, leaked document, or trending hashtag can reshape the conversation across the internet within hours. None of that automatically changes what happens inside a federal courtroom. Judges evaluate motions based on statutes, precedent, and procedural rules. Attorneys present arguments supported by evidence and legal authority. The jury, if the case proceeds to trial, will ultimately consider only the evidence admitted during the proceedings. That separation is intentional because the justice system is designed to prevent verdicts from being driven by internet trends instead of legally admissible facts. It may not stop people from forming opinions, but it does create a very different environment inside the courtroom than the one seen across social media. This is also why legal observers continue emphasizing that pretrial victories should be viewed as strategic developments rather than final outcomes. If a judge limits certain evidence or narrows specific arguments, the defense may gain an advantage in presenting its case. At the same time, prosecutors frequently adapt by relying more heavily on other evidence they believe supports their allegations. Both sides adjust. Both sides prepare. Both sides continue refining their arguments as the case moves forward. That constant adjustment is one reason federal cases often take significant time to resolve. They involve extensive preparation, careful review of evidence, and detailed legal analysis that cannot be rushed simply because the public wants immediate answers. For Lil Durk, the attention surrounding this case extends far beyond the courtroom because his career has made him one of the most recognized artists in hip-hop. Every legal development immediately becomes entertainment content, reaction videos, and endless online discussion. Yet it is worth remembering that legal proceedings and public narratives often move in completely different directions. While fans debate what they believe should happen, the court focuses on what can actually be proven under the law. That distinction is essential. Allegations are not convictions, legal arguments are not verdicts, and procedural rulings are not final judgments. Each stage serves a different purpose within the judicial process, and understanding those differences helps separate fact from speculation. Perhaps the biggest lesson from this entire situation is how easily attention can be pulled toward the loudest voices instead of the most meaningful developments. Viral clips often highlight emotional reactions, but they rarely explain the legal significance behind a court filing or judicial decision. As a result, many viewers walk away believing they understand the entire case after watching a 30-second video. In reality, the most consequential developments are usually found in detailed legal documents that receive far less attention. Those documents reveal how each side is building its strategy, responding to opposing arguments, and preparing for future proceedings. They provide a much clearer picture than any viral headline ever could. As this case continues, more hearings, rulings, and filings will likely shape the direction of the proceedings. Each development should be evaluated on its own merits rather than treated as proof that one side has already prevailed. For now, the most accurate conclusion is that Lil Durk's legal team continues to actively challenge elements of the government's case through the established legal process, while prosecutors continue pursuing their allegations in court. The final outcome remains undecided, and that uncertainty is exactly why careful attention to verified court developments matters more than speculation. In the end, the story that receives the fewest clicks today may become the one everyone wishes they had paid attention to tomorrow, because in high-profile federal cases, the quiet legal battles often have the greatest influence on what happens when the case finally reaches its conclusion. If there is one thing this case has exposed, it is how quickly the internet confuses momentum with a final result. A single courtroom update becomes a trending topic, and within minutes thousands of people start declaring winners and losers before the legal process has even reached its most important stage. That may create viral content, but it does not reflect how federal criminal cases actually work. Every filing, every response, and every hearing represents only one step in a much longer journey. That is why experienced attorneys rarely celebrate early victories or panic after temporary setbacks. They understand that cases of this size are decided through a series of carefully argued legal issues, not by whichever headline receives the most attention on social media. The real battle takes place in court, where every argument must be supported by evidence, and every claim must withstand legal scrutiny. What makes this situation especially fascinating is how much of the public conversation has focused on emotion instead of procedure. Fans naturally react to the artists they know from music, interviews, and performances. Critics focus on the seriousness of the allegations. Supporters point to the presumption of innocence, while others immediately predict conviction. Yet none of those opinions changes the legal standards that apply inside a courtroom. Federal judges are tasked with applying the law fairly, regardless of how popular or controversial a defendant may be. Prosecutors must prove their case through admissible evidence, and the defense has the right to challenge every significant aspect of that evidence. Those principles remain the same whether the defendant is a global recording artist or someone the public has never heard of. That consistency is one of the reasons the legal process often moves more slowly than people expect. Another point that deserves attention is the amount of preparation happening behind closed doors. While headlines focus on public hearings, legal teams spend countless hours reviewing documents, interviewing witnesses, analyzing digital evidence, researching prior court decisions, and preparing arguments that may never become public until they are presented in court. This work rarely generates headlines because it lacks dramatic visuals, but it often determines how effectively each side can present its case. Every motion filed reflects careful planning. Every written response is designed to address specific legal issues. Even small procedural disputes can influence how evidence is introduced or how witnesses are questioned later in the proceedings. These behind-the-scenes efforts rarely trend online, yet they are among the most important aspects of any major federal prosecution. The public also tends to underestimate how much flexibility exists during litigation. Neither side follows a completely fixed script. Prosecutors adapt when judges issue rulings that affect their evidence. Defense attorneys adjust when new information becomes available, or when legal arguments develop in unexpected ways. Strategy evolves throughout the case. That is why legal analysts avoid making absolute predictions based on isolated developments. They understand that one favorable ruling today may lead to a different legal challenge tomorrow. Likewise, one setback does not erase months of preparation or eliminate future opportunities to strengthen a position. Federal litigation is dynamic, and every stage influences the next. Recognizing that complexity provides a much more realistic understanding of what is taking place. This broader perspective also helps explain why so many experienced observers continue monitoring official court records instead of relying exclusively on social media summaries. Court filings provide context that short videos and viral posts often leave out. They explain the legal reasoning behind motions, identify the issues being disputed, and outline the arguments each side considers most important. Reading those documents requires more time than watching a brief clip, but they offer a far more accurate picture of the case. That is why journalists who regularly cover federal courts spend significant time reviewing filings before reporting major developments. Accuracy depends on understanding the legal process, not simply reacting to the latest headline. As this case continues, it is important to remember that the criminal justice system is designed to reach conclusions through evidence presented in court rather than through public speculation. Lil Durk has pleaded not guilty, and the prosecution continues pursuing its allegations through the judicial process. Those two facts can exist at the same time without creating a contradiction. The court's responsibility is to evaluate the evidence according to the law, while the public remains free to follow the proceedings and discuss verified developments. Separating verified information from speculation is essential, particularly in a case receiving this level of attention. It helps preserve a more accurate understanding of events and avoids turning ongoing legal proceedings into assumptions about an outcome that has not yet been reached. Ultimately, the reason this story continues attracting attention is not simply because of the artist involved. It also highlights how major federal cases unfold behind the scenes, often in ways that the average viewer never sees. While viral discussions come and go, the legal process continues at its own pace, guided by rules, evidence, and judicial decisions rather than internet trends. That is why the most significant developments are not always the loudest ones. Sometimes the biggest story is hidden inside a court filing, a procedural ruling, or a carefully argued motion that never becomes a viral clip. Those quiet moments often shape the direction of the case far more than any social media debate, and they are exactly where people looking for the complete picture should keep their attention as the proceedings move forward. If you made it all the way to the end, you're definitely someone who wants the full story, not just the loudest headline. That's exactly what this channel is about. We dig into the court documents, the verified developments, and the details that most people scroll right past. Instead of repeating the same viral clips everyone else is posting, we're focused on the facts that actually matter and the updates that could change the direction of the story. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Lil Durk's legal team is building real momentum with these pretrial motions? Or do you believe the prosecution still has the stronger case? Remember, this case is still ongoing, and the court has not reached a final verdict, so keep the discussion respectful and based on the information that is publicly available. Drop your thoughts in the comments because I read them all, and some of the best viewer insights end up shaping future videos. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more real hip-hop news without the clickbait rumors or made-up stories, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next update. We cover everything from major courtroom developments and industry moves to behind-the-scenes stories that other channels often overlook. And one more thing, don't leave just yet. Check out the next video on your screen because it connects directly to everything we talked about today. If this case takes another unexpected turn, you'll hear about it here first with verified updates, clear explanations, and the context that helps separate facts from speculation. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.